Hey everyone, it's Brian from Puente Hyundai. In today's video, we're actually going to be doing something a little different. We get a lot of customers that come in that say that they're looking for the manual transmission versions of cars. So we wanted to take an opportunity to help you guys out a little bit and show you how to drive a manual transmission. Now, we're going to be demonstrating this on this brand new, beautiful 2022 Hyundai Elantra N-Line. All right, everyone. So taking a look at this 2022 Hyundai Elantra N-Line. This is a manual transmission, which means that if you wanted to drive it, you kind of need to know how to drive stick. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the basic components on how to do this, and I'm going to be guiding you guys through the whole process. So we're going to go through the fundamentals first. Now, things that you might not know if you've never driven a manual transmission or if you've only ever driven automatic are going to be the differences between the interior. So one major difference, I would say the biggest one, is going to be the shifter. Now, in an automatic, you would have just one straight line typically in order to shift from park, neutral, drive, reverse. In a manual transmission, that is not the case. Now, there are different types of motors, different types of transmissions. In this case, at least for this Hyundai Elantra N-Line, we have a 6-speed manual transmission. There are 5 speeds, 4 speeds, what have you, 8 speeds. But on this case, we're going to be taking a look at our 6-speed. So taking a look at this transmission, you'll see on the actual shifter itself, Hyundai did a really nice thing in allowing you to know the shifting process. So it has R at the very far left, which would be for your reverse. You have shifters 1 through 6, which are just the gears. The lower the gear, the slower the speed. So you can think of it as this way. 1 would be maybe 10 to 20 miles per hour, 2, 20 to 40, and etc. Think of it that way. Taking a more in-depth look at the shifter, something that I did want to go over and cover with you is if you take a look at the top part. Now, Hyundai did a really nice job in explaining to you where each gear goes. But something I want to make very clear is that the 1 and the R are 2 different positions. If you were to just move it all the way to the left and up, you'll find first gear. But that is not the same place as R. Now, what Hyundai did, and this is manufacturer specific, different brands have different styles, but what Hyundai did as a safety feature is they use this lever here. So what you would do is you would actually push or pull up on this lever. When you pull up, the car will actually allow you to go even further left and in, and it'll when the car is on, it'll actually make a beeping sound to let you know that you are in reverse. So that is something I wanted to make very clear to you, because you have the shifter indicator up here, but you will need to push up on this in order to get it to R, which is reverse. Now, there is an N logo on here, and something that we want to make very clear, that the N logo is just representing the N-Line series. It is not a neutral system at all, and we just want to make that very clear because other shifters won't have that. A good way to know that you're in neutral or, for example, not in gear would be, and you'll see this a lot, manual transmission drivers will be just jiggling the shifter. By jiggling the shifter, you just realize that you're not engaged in any gear. Something just to kind of give you an example, if I were to put it in first gear now, and you can see that it rotated up. If I moved it, it's not going to move anywhere. It's in a solid gear. It's a lot different than being able to jank it left and right. So that is something that you can do just to kind of get and reassure yourself that you're not in gear. Another thing that's going to be different when it comes to the interior is going to be the pedals. Now, most people will know this. On a manual transmission car, there are 3 separate pedals, not just 2. On an automatic, you have brake and drive or go, the gas pedal, right? On a manual transmission, you will have a left at the very far left, and that's going to be your clutch. So that clutch pedal is what allows you to shift between one gear to the other. It's a very simple process that people make a little bit more complicated than it is, but that's what we're here for today, to kind of go over how to do that. Something that's really important that a lot of people don't know as well is that in order to turn on a manual transmission car, you have to have the clutch in, and then in an older car, for example, you would turn the key, or in this kind of car, for example, you would press the start button. Once you press that button with the clutch in, the vehicle will turn on. If you don't have your foot on the clutch, the car will not turn on. And that's something that you have to remember as a new manual transmission driver. Now, onto the actual experience of driving. So something that we want to make very clear is that, like I said, it is a very simple process, but like everything else in life, it does take some practice. So don't be afraid to go out there, try out the car, make sure you feel it. Now, something very critical for new drivers is something that a lot of experienced manual transmission drivers will know, which is called the friction zone. Now, that is something located typically in the first gear. You'll get this and you'll hear this a lot. First gear is the hardest one to master because you have more of that friction zone available to you. So what that means is, let's just say that I just turned on the vehicle, we're about to go on for a drive. Now, what you would do, like I said, in order to turn on the car is you put your foot on the clutch and then you turn it on. Now, once the car is on, as long as you're not in gear, you can let go of the clutch. You can let go of the clutch at any point when you're not in gear. And remember that little trick that we talked about, just shaking it to make sure that you're not in gear. You can do that as soon as you're good, you can let go. Now, when we start to drive, so we would put your foot on the clutch and then you just shift it into first gear. This is the essential part. Now, you're gonna feel a little bit of friction. And what that means is that there is a little spot. As soon as you let go of the clutch, there's a little spot that will engage the actual motion of driving. Now, that zone is different depending on what kind of car you're driving, depending on how new the clutch is, and etc. So it will take some time to figure out where that friction zone is for you in your car. The best way to practice that is when you're in first gear. You can actually find the friction zone by just slowly letting go of the clutch, holding onto the brake just a tad bit, and you'll feel that even without pressing on the gas, the car will start to move forward just by letting go of the clutch. Something very important though is that when you do find that friction zone, you're not supposed to just let go of the clutch. That is going to do something which is called stalling. That will cause the car to kind of abruptly move back and forward and then stall, which would mean shut off. You don't want that. So something to keep in mind is that if you do find that friction zone, you just keep it lightly there and then you give some gas in order to kind of neutralize that. So once you find the friction zone, you give it some more gas and it'll slowly start to take off again. Now, every car is different. Every car has different RPM limits, different sensors that help indicate when you should shift. Some even newer vehicles like our Veloster N, which if you haven't seen, go check that one out, has something called rev matching and rev shifting. So it allows you and it helps you know when it's time to shift. Let's just say that you have an older car, an older Hyundai or an older different kind of a manual transmission car that doesn't have that. What I always recommend in my personal driving habits is when you're driving and you start to see that the car gets past maybe 3,000-4,000 RPM, that's the perfect time to switch into shift into a different gear. So let's just say that we're driving fine, we're coasting. At this point in first gear, you no longer need the clutch in because you're just driving smoothly in first gear. Let's just say we're ready to move into second gear. What you would do is you'd continue to have your foot on the gas, but you would put your foot on the clutch, you'd push it all the way down, you would just switch it lightly into second gear, so just going straight down, following your shifter, and then at the same time, again, you're gonna be slowly letting go and then just giving it gas. That process you will continue to do from first to sixth gear every time you get to the 3,000 to 4,000 RPM mark. That way you can shift smoothly, you can be good on your RPMs, and you can be good on your MPG. It's just something that I recommend practicing over and over again, and at a certain point it will become like clockwork and it'll be very easy to shift in between every gear. All right, everyone, so I hope you enjoyed this video, but let's recap what we learned today. So what we learned is simple. Remember, make sure that it's in neutral when you turn on the car. Remember that you have to have your foot on the clutch in order to turn it on. Let's pretend we just turned it on. Now we're ready to move. Make sure that it's in neutral. We put our foot on the clutch. We put it in first. We have to find that friction zone. So we let go of the clutch slowly and we start to give it a little bit of gas. But again, remember, slowly, it's all a process. Once you find that little friction zone that is causing the car to move forward, then you give it some more gas, slowly release it, and you keep going on your way. Once you're on your way, remember, as soon as you hit that 3, 4, 5,000 RPM, whatever you choose, you push your foot back on the clutch all the way down, shift it to second, and then slowly let go of the clutch and give it more gas. It's a very simple process every time. So again, that's what we learned today. We'll keep going. We'll learn some new things together in the future. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video.